And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wanks, the sports desk in Culver City.
John, as we mentioned before, school gets back in a couple weeks, but teachers get to go on a long summer vacation every single year, and that's why I just discovered back in 2008, while she was employed with the LAUSD, Cecily Meyer Cruz and her summer break went on tour with the All-American Rejects.
When you see my face up against you, hell no!
I don't remember that song exactly turning out that way, but it's an interesting take.
When you see my face up against you, hell no!
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is an author and political commentator who you can read online at CousFiles.com. And you can also see him with Ann Coulter over at her Substack account. They do videos all the time. Definitely worth watching. You can follow him on Twitter at KausMickey. Mickey Kaus, welcome.
Thanks, John. You said Twitter, though.
Did I?
Not Twitter anymore. It's X.
Oh. Well, I stand corrected.
Haven't you followed the rebranding?
I saw them taking the sign down in San Francisco and replacing it with the new one today, but I had to take a double take because I wanted to make sure it just wasn't being stolen like everything else.
I think it's a disaster because he's going to, his basic problem is all the left-wingers have left Twitter and they're searching for someplace else. I don't think Threads is that place, but this is just going to give them another excuse to leave. It's not even the old Twitter. It's a completely different site. It's X. So why am I sticking around? My line has always been that the key test will be which way Maggie Haberman jumps. So she's sort of like the center of the conventional wisdom, and she's a good reporter, and everybody. And she, so far, she's tweeting a lot more than she's zooking, or she's Xing more than she's zooking. So I think X is winning that one so far. It's hard to argue that you have a better conversation on X, but go ahead.
If you have a name that everyone knows, I don't know why in the world you'd ever change it. And I remember having this conversation with my old co-host, Jillian Barbary. When she got married to a guy by the name of Grant Reynolds. And it was very important to him that she take his name. The problem is that everyone in Los Angeles knew who Jillian Barbary was. Nobody knew who Jillian Reynolds was. And by changing her name, that devalued herself because she took away a lot of her fame. She took away a lot of her notoriety. Sure. People saw the name and they didn't know who that was. Whereas if you put Jillian Barbary's name on the screen, they know exactly who it was. I think it's a mistake to change the name, if considering you have almost universal name ID.
It's like Datsun was poised to be one of the greatest car companies in the world, and then they changed their name to Nissan for some stupid reason, and they fell behind Toyota and never recovered. Yes, but maybe Ron DeSantis should change his name.
I like the fact that he's bringing a lot of the controversial people back because people who push the limits to me are interesting. I may not agree with what they say, but having a debate with people who are certainly on the fringes is something that I find entertaining. But the other stuff I don't know about. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of people in my feed now on Twitter who I don't follow. I get a lot of people who I don't care to follow, and I don't care to read what they have to say. And I'm also getting a lot of porn in my feed. And I don't know what that's about, but they seem to be changing the way it operates.
That's what everybody says. And it's interesting that you say that because I hear that mostly from the left. So if you say it, it must be true. Not that I wouldn't believe you anyway, no matter what anybody said. But I think that's true. I don't use the algorithmic feed, so it doesn't really affect me that much. But a lot of people did, and it was a good news ticker. You could find out who won the Spanish elections just by going on to Twitter before anybody else did. So that function has been degraded. I think it's because he let everybody pay to get a blue check, and then he prioritized the blue checks, and the left didn't pay, and the right paid, and so you get all sorts of right people. I was attempting a segue to DeSantis, though.
Yes, I saw that. Now, we just had this conversation with Barbara Stone, the political scientist, and I am of the belief that what DeSantis is doing wrong, and I think he's screwing this up, and I think part of what he's screwing up is that he hired all the Ted Cruz people, and the Ted Cruz people are telling him to do exactly what Ted Cruz did last time around, and that didn't work.
And they have $120 million.
Yes, but to my eye, Republican voters don't have a problem with Trump over politics. They largely agree with his populist vision of the Republican Party. They don't think that he is a Jeb Bush type of squish. They see him as essentially standing for the same things that they do. What they don't like, the Republicans I know who don't like him, they find his personality to be obnoxious. They like the policies, they just want to cut out all the drama. And I thought that the winning hand of cards that DeSantis had would be to be a populist-style Republican where you don't take the open border position, you're tough on China, you don't spend all of your time talking about entitlement reform, you pretty much just stick to the basics that won the 2016 election, but then you don't bring all of the bells and whistles that Trump brings with him. And you also say, I'm the guy that stood up to Trump when Trump told me to shut my state down. I didn't do it. And if I were in the White House, I would have fired Fauci and Birx, and I would have put different people in there, and COVID would have been a very different experience in this country. But the DeSantis people seem to believe that COVID is yesterday's news, and they need to be culture warriors and get to the right on Trump on everything. And I don't think that's a good strategy in the primary, and I don't think that's a good strategy in the general. Your thoughts?
I agree completely. It's interesting that none of these stories really name names. They don't name the Cruz people. I assume it's a guy named Jeff Rowe.
Yes, he runs the Super PAC.
And somehow he's wound up with more money than DeSantis, so he is effectively running the campaign, and he's waging all these crazy culture wars. And what you said is exactly what he should do. I like Trump's policies. I will get it done. I'm afraid Trump didn't get a lot done, like on the border. But I will get it done. I have a proven record of getting it done. And when he goes on mainstream news media and talks to Jake Tapper, he seems totally credible and head and shoulders above the rest of the Republican field. So he doesn't need all this crazy mishigas with these very, very bizarre videos that go by so fast that my poor aging boomer eyes can't even keep up with what images are being shown. But there seems to be a lot of gay people, and then DeSantis with lasers coming out of his eyes. I guess the kids go for that, but I don't think he needs that. And he certainly doesn't need $120 million of it.
I'll tell you what I also think has been bad for him. When COVID happened, it caused all of the decks to reshuffle. People who lived in the cities moved to the suburbs. People who lived in the blue states moved to the red states. People who lived in areas that had a lot going on moved to quieter towns. And one of the things that happened is it seems like all of the conservative social media influencers all picked up and moved to Florida. And these people don't know what they don't know, and they all have his ear. And they're giving him horrible advice. They're telling him to do things that are absolute poison. And because they have big followings in the world that he lives in, he assumes that they know what they're talking about, and they don't.
That's possible. I didn't. The one event I went to down there was a fundraiser, and those people were not really in evidence. There was a guy named John Cardillo, but he's a big influencer, but he seemed to have his head screwed on straight. He didn't seem one of these crazy culture warriors. So I don't quite know how they would penetrate into DeSantis's world. I could see where they'd penetrate into the consultants' world, or they, got big Twitter following, so they say, "Oh, we have to be hip and reach these influencers." But I thought the problem with DeSantis was he was too isolated.
Well, he just did the CNN interview, which I think was his first CNN interview in a very long time. But if you're DeSantis and you are the one that understands the policy better than anyone else in the primary, why are you keeping that man off the Today Show? Why are you keeping him off Good Morning America and Gayle King and the rest of those programs that have huge followings where you
Right.
may expose yourself to people who don't watch One America.
Right, and normally, the media hates him. They'll do anything to squelch him. But now he has, I'm the crazy Ron DeSantis. Don't you want a confrontation with me on your show? And then he gets on the show, and he's perfectly reasonable and appealing. And people say, hey, that Ron DeSantis isn't that bad. He has that play. He can do it any time. He should run it immediately, as often as possible.
Let's talk about Trump for a second. One of the things that I look at in the news media that causes me to worry a bit is all of the money that he's raising in these various email pleas to supporters, where he asks to give him money where he can build the wall and take the country away from Joe Biden and do all of these things. But I say to myself, he's probably going to spend all of this on his criminal defense, and he's going to get in trouble for that at some point. Do you see that happening?
I was hoping for something like that happening his entire first term. Remember, he was going to use something to buy himself a plane, I believe, and everybody thought that was sort of a graft. And I don't think it's going to work. I wish it did. I wish he got in trouble because the base wised up and said, wait, he's defrauding us. He's misusing our money. But I think everybody sort of knows what he is. They know you give him money, he's going to use it for whatever the hell he wants. And there's an actual good reason for wanting Trump to stay rich, because Jared Kushner is richer. And the more richer Jared Kushner gets versus Trump, the more there's a chance that Jared Kushner would come back in a Trump administration, second Trump administration. And that would be an even larger disaster than it's looming to be.
Let's shift gears and talk about the Democrats for a second, because you are a Democrat who doesn't necessarily see eye to eye with the party on every single subject. And because of that, I'm sure you've gotten some blowback over the years. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running for president on a platform that conflicts with a lot of Democratic Party dogma as it stands. Because of that, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz went after him pretty aggressively in a committee hearing that he was testifying in last week. And over the weekend, Nancy Pelosi went on television and also went after him with claws. What do you think his play is right now in this Democratic primary when he's taking so many positions that are against what most Democrats stand for? Do you think he's doing this to promote his theories on the vaccine, or do you think he thinks that there are Democrats out there that don't necessarily align with the party and their positions?
Well, I think he knows that there are Democrats that don't align with the party, and he's following in his father's tradition. He will talk about it, that Robert F. Kennedy had a great appeal to what was then the right wing, the sort of especially the white working class. And when he was shot and killed, his votes went to George Wallace, famously. So I think he's trying to replicate that old Bobby Kennedy coalition. And I think Biden is scared of it. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been this, memo that went out to every Democrat, even every member of the Kennedy family, to turn on RFK Jr. It's been astounding, and it sounds like there's something they're really worried about. And since he's doing 12 to 16% of the polls, I don't quite know what they're worried about. I guess they're worried about a last-minute surge in New Hampshire where he gets 40% and really embarrasses Biden the way Gene McCarthy did LBJ. He's just a repository for people that have had it with the wokeism and the tolerance of crazy left-wing policies under Biden, and he could easily do him some damage. I don't know running for a third party is a smart move for him, but I think that would probably hurt the Republicans more than the Democrats.
Well, here's his threat to Biden in the primary from my perspective. One of the reasons that Bernie Sanders did so well against Hillary Clinton in 2016 was not because there was this hotbed of socialism sweeping the country or even the Democratic Party, particularly in the places where he won, places like West Virginia, places that are regarded now as Republican states. I think what you saw was a lot of Democrats who just said, I know I don't like Hillary, so I'm going to vote for whoever the alternative is. And with Joe Biden's negatives as high as they are, I think there are a lot of Democrats who are worried that people are going to see the Kennedy name on the ballot and they're going to say, I know I don't like Joe. He's too old to be president. I'm just going to vote for whoever's on the ballot running against him. And if there's only one option, or I guess two if you count Marianne Williamson, but he's the name that everyone knows, he could surprise some people by finishing much stronger than they're anticipating because he's the anybody but Biden option.
No, I think that's right. Although that, my big worry is that Biden has a fallback, which is he's damaged. The scandal gained tremendous momentum today with the revelation that Biden was listening in on some of Hunter's phone calls, and he's planning to pass the torch to Gavin Newsom. And I wanted to ask you, since you're a Newsom expert, is that as crazy and stupid an idea as I think it is?
I don't think he'd pass the torch to Newsom. I think Newsom would take the torch and then burn down Joe's house in Wilmington.
But that seems to me a Hillary Clinton-like mistake, to think that Gavin Newsom has broad national appeal.
Well, he's trying to cultivate his image in California. He just leaned on the state legislature when the Public Safety Committee voted to not go after people who were trafficking children for the purposes of the sex trade. They said that they didn't want to do that because that would result in more blacks and browns going to prison, so the Democrats killed it in the legislature. And he went ballistic over it and had him do a revote, and now it looks like it's going to pass. The same thing is true for fentanyl. The Democrats in Sacramento do not want to increase the penalties for dealing fentanyl, and he thinks that's a bad look for him nationally. He's not playing to the California crowd anymore. He's playing to the national crowd. And whenever the California politicians attract what he believes is negative attention that's associated with him, that's when he lets them have it in private, not in public.
Well, but people know that he's forced this revote, and I think it works to his favor. His big advantage is that the California Democrats are so crazy left that they offer him a lot of opportunities to sort of stiff arm them and sister soldier them, if you will. And that's good for him nationally. So he's sitting pretty. I think his big problem is personality. I just think he comes across as an upper-class twit.
Well, to me, he comes across as being a complete slime ball. He's the guy that slept with his campaign manager and best friend's wife during the campaign when the guy was putting his blood, sweat, and tears into the race. I think that's all you need to know about Gavin Newsom.
It is. It's like that John Kerry threw somebody else's medal over the wall. You don't need to know any more about the guy, right?
What do you make of these arguments? You mentioned Hunter Biden, and you turn on The View or you turn on some of these shows on the mainstream media, and they say, this is a drug addict doing drug addict things, and this is a father who cares about his son, and that's all you need to know. That seems to be... Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, not if he's the big guy getting 10% of the profits, then he's implicated.
Yeah, that seems to be the way that the Biden people want to spin it. They want to spin it as a loving father doing everything he can to help his troubled son. But there are a lot of people that go to jail for helping criminals do criminal things. And if you benefited from the criminal doing criminal things, then you're definitely in trouble.
I think. I was shocked that there was any hint of corruption on the part of Biden, and I'm now convinced that he may well be corrupt. And I sort of don't care if I was happy with Biden's policies. I mean, the alternative is Trump, who is not exactly a League of Women Voters opponent. If Biden got the job done, so what if he took 10%? Are there any other voters who feel that way? I mean, you have to. It's worse than Watergate, so it's something you have to pursue. But I wonder if ultimately the voters are going to say, we think he's corrupt and we don't care.
Nancy Pelosi was on TV this weekend saying the committee hearing was a clown show, and she really wouldn't get into any of the specifics outside of calling it a clown show and focusing on the pornographic pictures that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene put up on the easel and showed on television. Do you think over the long term that position is going to hold, or is she going to be forced to engage in the specifics?
No, I don't think it will hold. But the big test will be Biden's poll numbers. If it looks like, and it doesn't look that way now, if it looks like he's a sure loser to Trump, the media will turn on him and say, we want a Democratic president. This guy's going to lose. And all of a sudden, this ammunition in terms of this scandal is lying around for them to use. So at that point, he drops out. But I think, or is under tremendous pressure. But as long as he's beating Trump 47-40 in the polls, I think it will hold until, the weight of the evidence becomes even more, even heavier than it is now. And now it's the people who are following it know that there's something there, but the average voter doesn't.
Mickey Kaus. You can read him online at kausfiles.com and follow him on the artist formerly known as Twitter at KausMickey. Mickey Kaus, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, John. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And because we're the show where everyone decides to swear, if you want to go back and listen to an interview with, Larry Elder, and listen to him swear on the show, that you can do quite easily.
That's right. You just go to KBC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes, including the last time Larry was on.
Well, John, as I've told you before, unless Joe Biden can can screw up a mirror.
Larry!
Larry!
You're on the freaking radio!
I said screw up.
It's one of the strangest interviews that I've ever heard on talk radio.
Do not do interviews on an internet stream that doesn't work. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. We just got an email from listener Ken about the movie Oppenheimer that was certainly popular at the Cineplex this weekend. Listener Ken said, John, not showing the atomic explosions in the Oppenheimer movie is like not showing the happy endings in a porno. Well, that's certainly a way of looking at it. 800-222-KABC. Earlier in the show, we checked in with our disastrous district attorney, George Gascon, and his presence on TikTok. But, Randy, it wasn't just about not going after people who resist arrest that was on his mind.
No, he has a whole bunch of videos in season 2 of Ask the DA, including, and I'm sure people are very curious, George Gascon and his office must have a lot of free time since they refuse to file charges on a whole bunch of different criminal cases, and they don't file enhancements. What do they do with that free time? They take people that were sent to prison for 15 years and resentence them to 7.
That sounds like LAUSD math to me.
And here's Gascon talking about how great this is.
My office receives hundreds of claims of actual innocence every year and has received close to 10,000 resentencing requests since...
What is this background music?
I think this is a violin, if I'm not mistaken.
It sounds like something that you would play when two star-crossed lovers are at a distance because the boat's going away slowly.
And has received close to 10,000 resentencing requests since I took office in December of 2020. Recognizing such a public need, one of my priorities was...
The public need of giving people less jail time that they were already convicted of?
Boy, this guy has a bastardized view of humanity.
Recognizing such a public need, one of my priorities was to expand both the Conviction Integrity Unit to review claims of actual innocence, as well establish a resentencing unit to review cases of people eligible for a reduced sentence under state law.
This is what he spends his time on.
Knowing that he spends his time thinking about these sorts of things really does explain a lot.
Forget trying to keep people safe. Forget trying to be an advocate for the victims. He is trying to go through every single person that was sent to prison from this office and see if we can get them out on a Prop 57 technicality.
Prior to the establishment of the resentencing unit, this office opposed virtually all resentencing requests.
Because the district attorney's job is to keep the criminals in prison where they belong.
Yeah, you see, that's before all the crime rates started spiking.
If Jackie Lacey got a resentencing request from a gang member convicted of murder, she ignored it. And that's why she was good at her job.
That was before we had Dum Dum as DA.
Well, I mean, Jackie Lacey was in such an impossible position, with Black Lives Matter calling her a racist.
Yeah, she was the blackface of white supremacy before Larry.
And the CIU was a third of its current size. Since I assumed office, the CIU has...
That's assumed office, but I guess we can talk in the present tense.
Where did he learn his English?
Cudahy.
Since I assumed office, the CIU has exonerated 4 people, 3 individuals just this year, and we have resentenced over 170 people.
170 people who had a trial, were convicted, were sentenced by a judge, and he said, nah, I'm going to do you one better.
Now they're out to prey on you, and that's why we all win.
This case has taken time.
If you wonder why the homeless population keeps going up, think about the fact that we keep letting people out of prison every year.
This case has taken time. Attorneys and investigators in this unit are committed to the work, and we're proud to have surpassed.
Does he think himself to be the hero in some Elizabethan romance novel? What the hell is going on with this music?
Oh, I'm sure in his mind he is the hero in this story. He is the persecuted hero who is laying his life on the line for the people who are the poor and downtrodden.
Prior administration in successfully processing these claims. Regardless, the work of this unit remains in high demand. And we thank you for your patience as our dedicated teams continue to process this request.
Process this request.
Like
he's working at a call center.
But now, Johnny, here's why we should count our lucky stars that we're here in Los Angeles County. Because this man is insane, this man is dangerous, but he's also nowhere even close than Miss Pamela Price. Pamela Price is now the subject of a recall up in Alameda County, which means for the first time in her 6-month reign as Madam District Attorney, which is what she forces people to call her, she's finally doing interviews. And they're not going well. Listen to this nugget.
So we've learned from other district attorneys and other studies around the country, the DA's role has really no impact on crime. To create a safe community, we need to invest in alternatives to incarceration. We need to invest in programs for young people. People need jobs.
And she's got the crazy eyes.
She does. Oh, listen to this nugget when she was asked if she favors the criminals over the victims.
Some people say this is at the cost of justice. In your pursuit of achieving equity, it is favoring perpetrators over victims. Is that correct?
That's absolutely not true. Often what studies have shown, and it's true in Alameda County, many times people who are perpetrators or labeled as perpetrators were actually victims. Many people.
That's the argument that's used to defend people who deal fentanyl or who traffic children for the purposes of selling them to the sex trade.
These people were victims of crime, too, so they are blameless for anything they did.
She got elected. She got elected in a big county.
Just when we thought we'd learned our lesson, and after the massive recall of Chesa Boudin, Alameda County just had to go and show us that we're still doing this.